Okay, Assalamu alaikum everyone. Just a quick announcement, we will be beginning in 5 minutes. We will be beginning the conference in 5 minutes, so if I could ask everyone downstairs to please bring your tea with you and take your seats. We will be beginning the conference in 5 minutes, inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين أبو القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين. Brothers, sisters, respected scholars, elders and dignitaries, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to the inaugural session of the International Center for Advanced Islamic Research's third annual conference, God in the Modern World. To begin the conference, I would like to ask Brother Adam Kaku to join me on the podium and bless us with a recitation from the Holy Quran. Please welcome him with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم كلا إن الإنسان ليطغى أن رآه استغنى إن إلى ربك الرجعى أرأيت الذي ينهى عبدا إذا صلى أرأيت إن كان على الهدى أو أمر بالتقوى أرأيت إن كذب وتولى ألم يعلم بأن الله يرى كلا لئن لم ينتهي لنسفعا بالناصية ناصية كاذبة خاطئة فليدع ناديه سندع الزبانية صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Ahsantum. Thank you so much, Brother Adam, for that beautiful recitation. Please let's show our appreciation once more to Brother Adam with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. It's really nice to see so many of you here on a Saturday morning. I know that we lured you here with breakfast and karak chai, but thank you for coming. ICAIR is a relatively new organization, and it is wonderful to see such a strong showing of support from both the local community here in Toronto and those of you who are tuning in worldwide. But what is ICAIR? What is the International Center for Advanced Islamic Research? Well, ICAIR arose in response to a perceived need in the English-speaking world for scholarly, intellectual resources in the English language for Shia Muslims to confront the challenges of the modern world. The goal of ICAIR is to bridge the gap between three pillars: the university, the seminary, and the community. And through bridging these gaps, to produce the necessary resources and insights and guidance for Muslims to live faithfully while also living in the modern world. And that ties directly into the theme of our conference today. Now, the way in which we achieve this is through three main strategies. One is through events like the conference that you're in right now, through monthly seminars, talks, workshops, through academic roundtables like the one that we had yesterday at Emmanuel College that was kindly facilitated by your president, Rizwan Khalfan, to who we're very grateful for introducing us. And also, in addition to events, through publications and partnerships. And so we have our journal, Al-Qalam, which has produced 2 issues so far, and we are looking forward, inshallah, later this year to release our 3rd issue. And our hope is that through the production of these intellectual resources, we can help both the scholars living in the West and the faithful address the challenges that modern living poses, that we can nurture the community both intellectually and spiritually. My enduring memory growing up as a young Shia Muslim in the West was a lack of resources. I remember having to beg, borrow, and steal volumes of the original translation of Al-Mizan that was published by Wofis in those little yellow volumes. I can see Dr. Coolidge sort of smiling. I think we've both been on the same journey with Al-Mizan. And it makes me really happy now because the Tawheed Institute in Australia have published the entire translation of Al-Mizan and made it available some 20 years later. And so much has changed in the last 20 years. For example, in this conference right now, we have scholars from not one, not two, but 3 Shia Islamic academic institutions participating. We have the International Center for Advanced Islamic Research, of which I'm a part. We also have Maulana Rizvi and Dr. Vinay Ketia from the Shia Research Institute right here in Toronto, and also from London. Not that I'm biased. We have scholars, we have Sheikh Muhammad Ali Ismail and Sheikh Saeed Subhani from the Islamic College for Advanced Studies. And so we are truly blessed as a community in the West to have so many institutions now addressing these needs. And it is our hope as ICAIR that we can bring together scholars and practitioners of the Islamic sciences to the community. We can bring them together in events like this and present their knowledge to the community so that we can all benefit. And it's also great to see scholars here who've come from so many continents, especially with everything that's going on. We've had speakers who've had to endure war, floods, and flight cancellations to be here, and we're incredibly grateful to them, and I'm looking forward to hearing their speeches. The theme of the conference, God in the Modern World, was chosen after lengthy internal discussions, because we live in a changing world, and we live in a highly materialistic world. We face challenges and questions about things like cryptocurrency, like artificial intelligence, like how to live authentically in a digital age, questions about the self. And the hope is that through a conference like this, we cannot answer, not that to answer all those questions definitively, but to start the conversation, to build connections. And one of the most beautiful things I've seen coming out of this conference already is seeing people interacting, bringing together scholars from different continents and seeing those networks forming, those bonds forming, which will become the foundation for future collaborations. And yesterday, we took that one step further when we went to Emmanuel College and we had a dialogue with Christian and Buddhist theologians there on the question of intercession. And there was this beautiful moment when we sort of gone into breakout groups and we had Shia scholars and academics interacting with Christian theologians, Buddhist scholars, graduate students from Emmanuel, and there were all these groups talking together, sharing their experiences, sharing their knowledge and insights with one another, asking questions, learning about one another. And it was a truly touching moment because when I saw that happening, I just felt this is how we solve the world's problems. Through understanding, through knowledge, through learning. And it's wonderful to see that we have now scholars in the West and institutions in the West that can bring the learning of the Ahlul Bayt, alayhim salam, not just to the community in the West, but to the wider society in the West, because we are living in a world that is thirsty for spirituality, that is thirsty for meaning, and that is thirsty for authenticity and knowledge. Now, I think I've said more than enough. I've spoken far too much for an organizer, and there are far more learned and interesting people that I want to bring up on the stage. So, before we begin, I just want to say a very big thank you on behalf of ICAIR and on behalf of the World Federation to the local community here at the JCC. The level of support we have received in setting all of this up has been incredible. And the volunteers here at the JCC have been working tirelessly for weeks now to make this happen. And I have to tell you, it is so heartening to see so many young people from the community involved, whether it's at the registration desks, setting up the chairs, the audiovisual equipment, and I've just been hearing so many great stories about the initiatives that the youth have been undertaking here. And all I can say is that you are truly blessed as a community to be this community. So thank you. Please give yourselves a salawat. So, just to quickly give you a sense of how the conference is going to run, If you look at your conference booklets, you'll see that there is a schedule in there, split across 2 days, today and tomorrow. We're going to begin now with an opening session in which, after I finish speaking, I'm going to invite the Secretary General of NASIMCO, Al-Hajj Mohammed Arif Jagani, up to the stage to say a few introductory remarks and welcome you all to this program. Followed by him, I will invite the President of ISIG Toronto, Al-Hajj Rizwan Khalfan, also to come up to the stage and give some welcoming remarks. Followed by this, we will have some keynote remarks from Sayyid Mohammed Rizvi, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, but he's blessed us with a beautiful video message that we'll be playing shortly. After that, there will be a few minutes break. We are running a little behind schedule, so it won't be 15 minutes, and then we will begin our first panel. And the structure of the panels will be that we'll have a number of presenters come up and deliver papers, deliver lectures, followed by a question and answer session. And the way the question and answer session will work is there will be 2 microphone stands here, which you'll be able to come up to and line up behind to ask your questions, but we will also be using Slido. So Slido is an online app that will allow you, if like me, you don't necessarily feel like standing up in front of an audience and asking your question, you can send it via Slido. So then what will happen is it'll be like a message that comes through to the chair and they can ask your question for you, and it's completely anonymous. So feel free to ask any of those burning questions that you've always wanted to have an answer to but were afraid to ask, within reason, of course. We will also have lunch and salah starting at 12:30, and I'll give you some more details on that at the end of our first session, just before we go to lunch, so I can clarify the arrangements. And if you have any questions in the meantime, please feel free to ask our ushers and volunteers. They're here to help, and I'm sure, given they're from the local community, you already know them, and so they'll be far more knowledgeable than me about where you need to go and what you need to do. Before I invite the Secretary General of NASIMCO, Al-Hajj Mohammed Arif Jagani, up to the stage, I would just like to play you a short video about ICAIR so that hopefully you can get further insight into who we are and the work that we do. Please recite a salawat. Kindly play the video. The International Center of Advanced Islamic Research, ICAIR, is a pioneering, state-of-the-art institute for Islamic studies affiliated with the World Federation of KSIMC. ICAIR concentrates on advanced Islamic and Shia studies at both theoretical and applied levels.
The Khoja Shia International Muslim community has experienced significant journey of faith from its Indian heritage towards the Shia international faith, yet it has maintained its distinct cultural identity since the 1870s. After over 150 years of our evolution in a fast-changing world of today, with increasing diversity, with presence in over 6 regions, over 150 Jamaats globally, living in a complex yet sophisticated world with reliance on artificial intelligence, digitalization of information exchange, the accessibility has generated countless faith-related issues, ideological and ethical questions, sometimes challenging the core of our beliefs, necessitating expert and comprehensive responses to these issues. In 2021, the World Federation took the groundbreaking initiative to establish a visionary Islamic research center that would provide an academic platform to discuss the undiscussable. Our diligent efforts have come to fruition, and we are delighted to present to you ICAIR, the International Center of Advanced Islamic Research.
The Institute will aim for a global reach, of course, through the regional hubs where Khojas and non-Khoja Ithna Shia communities have a presence, and within the Hausa Seminary. This research institute will be a bridge between the Hausa Seminary, which represents the heritage of the traditional Shia studies spanning almost 14 centuries, and a bridge to the academic scholarship from modern universities, which exemplify the secular approach to social sciences and to religious studies.
Amongst its goals, ICAIR seeks to promote research into contemporary issues significant to Islamic scholars, academia from all backgrounds, and share key insights and findings through various mediums, including publications, lectures, courses, digital platforms, and more.
Academic dialogue is central to ICAIR, which provides an inter- and intra-faith forum for exchanging ideas and perspectives on numerous issues. Scholars from various orientations are welcome to participate in ICAIR's programs and activities, fostering a dynamic atmosphere of knowledge and religious thought. Additionally, the Research Centre aims to support community work by offering skills and development training to various groups within the community, including faith leaders, students from the Hausa, specialists, and lay people. ICAIR's London headquarters at Hujjat Harefield features a spacious auditorium, a conference room, an extensive library with workspaces for students and scholars, discussion areas, classrooms, and management offices.
Practically, ICAIR envisions a state-of-the-art library with specialist and rare books covering different disciplines of Islamic studies in languages such as Arabic, English, French, and Persian. These encompass topics like Islamic jurisprudence, Quranic sciences, philosophy, ethics, and history, amongst others. The International Center for Advanced Islamic Research also organizes an annual international conference in various global regions, in addition to training workshops, short and long courses, gatherings for scholars, and specialized and general seminars and webinars for scholars, students of Islamic studies, and the broader English-speaking public.
The Al-Qalam Journal for Advanced Islamic Studies is a biannual publication by ICAIR featuring high-quality, peer-reviewed academic articles, insightful book reviews, and academic news. This journal is a part of a broader and comprehensive publication strategy which includes academic theses, specialist and layman books, translations, religious curriculum, textbooks, and Islamic educational material for all religious seasons.
Given that most publications from the Hausa Seminary are in Arabic or Persian, ICAIR pursues an active translation strategy to eliminate the language barrier between Islamic thinkers, jurists, and the English-speaking audience. The ICAIR website is your go-to resource for all information about the Institute. It introduces you to ICAIR's concept and functions, its core team, news about past and upcoming events, and, most importantly, its rich research content.
ICAIR encourages innovative intellectuals committed to strengthening Islamic studies to contribute articles and share their research for publications and collaboration opportunities.
International Center for Islamic Research offers scholars opportunities such as grants and fixed-term research fellowships for transforming their projects and research into top-notch publications. During these fellowships, they will have access to some of the leading scholars in the Islamic seminaries, as well as academics from North American and European universities.
ICAIR also facilitates exchange visits and programs between scholars from the Islamic world, the Hausa Seminary, and the secular academia. This allows for a more immersive experience of each other's perspectives and paradigms.
Among the practical aspects of ICAIR's research is engaging in strategic studies which will be guided by data and which will be conducted by experts. The findings and the recommendations will be incorporated and adopted as guidance policies within the World Federation and its member communities worldwide.
The International Center for Advanced Islamic Research is not merely an academic research institute, it follows a hybrid model serving as a reference point for the Khoja Shia Ithna Ashari community in religious discourse and Islamic thought.
In summary, ICAIR is a platform for discussing the undiscussable and finding answers to all ideological questions anyone may have, regardless of their beliefs, sectarian denomination, or cultural background. I'd forgotten that I'd narrated that. That was a video explaining a little bit more about ICAIR and the work that we do, but now I'd like to move on to inviting some of the dignitaries of our partner organizations to the stage. Obviously, if you look at your schedule, WF President Haj Safdar Jafar was scheduled to speak, but due to flight delays, he will now be addressing the conference tomorrow, inshallah, in the morning. so please don't miss that. But now I would like to invite Brother Al-Hajj Muhammad Arif Jagani to the stage to welcome you all to this conference and help us inaugurate the first session. Please welcome him with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me, guys? Okay. Okay. Mr. Chairman, sir, distinguished guests, esteemed scholars, respected members of the intellectual and academic community. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Amin ya rabbal alamin. On behalf of NASIMCO, it is my distinct privilege and pleasure to extend a heartfelt and warm welcome to each and every one of you who is gathered today. A year ago, NASIMCO was privileged to preside at ICAIR's official opening at Hujjat Harefield in England, and today we are equally honored that you have selected our region as for one of your very first international conferences. And the ISIJ of Toronto, being our largest member Jamaat, is naturally fitting the bill as the best venue for this summit. As Secretary of NASIMCO, my function has been merely to serve as liaison to facilitate this gathering, so I cannot take credit for all the heavy lifting that has gone into preparing this for this conference. A lot of this work was undertaken by the Toronto Jamaat, its volunteers, in collaboration with our Secretariat. As we come together this weekend, we embark on what promises to be a journey of knowledge, enlightenment, and collaboration. ICAIR's commitment to scholarship and dialogue resonates deeply with NASIMCO's mission, which is to propagate understanding of our faith outside of our community. We commend their efforts in shaping the discourse and fostering understanding. Okay, that part was ChatGPT. But, Mr. Chairman, let me comment on the appropriateness of your topic and the theme of the conference today, which is God in the Modern World. I consider that to be very pertinent in today's times. A couple of decades ago, if somebody asked me the question, which is the fastest growing religion in the world, I would have undoubtedly and unequivocally said Islam. However, recently it has come to my attention that the answer today is not just Islam, but unfortunately atheism. A lot of today's generation in North America apparently has lost its power of reasoning. Common sense, it seems, is not common. In theosophical discussions I've had with young men or young people, I find that they're not totally opposed to the concept of a universal creator or a primal cause as a being that necessarily has to exist in order to explain what was first ahead of everything else. The proof is obviously by induction that, after all, something cannot emerge from nothing. However, a lot of the same people have trouble understanding how an esoteric being can produce matter. They want to know more, and the educators have to find creative and interesting ways to present our message in order to engage them. For example, we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself is the one who grants tawfiq to certain thinkers amongst us and inspires them, and not necessarily Muslims. As he says so himself in the Quran, وَتُعِزُّ مَن تَشَاءُ وَتُذِلُّ مَن تَشَاءُ بِيَدِكَ الْخَيْرُ. Many of those thinkers have put forward scientific theories that can be practically used to advance our understanding of Tawheed and to present it to the younger people. Now, I'm not an alim by any means, but as an engineer and scientist, we always look for ways which are tangible and practical to be able to explain certain things. Take, for instance, the theory of Albert Einstein, in which he proposed that, with his famous equation, E equals mc squared, it shows that mass or matter and energy are interchangeable. In my humble opinion, this explains a lot. As we have seen from nuclear energy, it takes a very small amount of mass or matter to produce tremendous amounts of energy. But do you know that the reverse is also true? That if you have tremendous amounts of energy, that process in turn can be used to produce matter. Now, this is a concept that people can learn from universities when they're learning part of science and can relate to it. And we can use this to advance the concept of Tawheed. For instance, if you consider that the primal cause, being Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you can consider him to be an infinite source of energy. And that would go a long way in logically explaining how matter and mass originated, for instance. So this, if we present this kind of argument, this would be what would appeal to common sense for these people and advance their very simplistic but powerful way of understanding the concept of Tawheed. So perhaps this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala means when he says repeatedly in the Quran, Inna Allaha ala kulli shay'in qadir. Certainly Allah is powerful over everything. The above is just one example of the reasoning that can be applied in deriving from scientific evidence, and it is very relevant to find such ways to reason with today's generation and its atheistic tendencies. That is why institutions like ICAIR are so important and relevant in today's world. As we gather today, let us seize the opportunity to engage in meaningful dialogue with open minds, exchange ideas, and foster collaborations that will propel our community forward in the pursuit of knowledge and enlightenment. I commend all of you scholars who have put in the hard work and effort to write and present papers at this conference. And in closing, I would like to extend my sincerest gratitude to the organizers, sponsors, and participants of this conference for their dedication and commitment to advancing the cause of knowledge and scholarship. Thank you. Salawat.
Ahsantum, thank you for those very poignant and reflective and thought-provoking remarks. Please, let's show our appreciation for Al-Hajj Muhammad Arif Chagani one more time with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. His remarks about Tawheed made me remember the story about Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Oh, I think we need a better salawat than that for Amir al-Mu'mineen. There's the story that we often hear in majalis that an Arabi, a Bedouin, came to Amir al-Mu'mineen on the way to the Battle of Siffin. So Amir al-Mu'mineen was on the way to fight Muawiyah, and an Arabi, a Bedouin, came to him and asked him, about Tawheed, about God. And Amir al-Mu'mineen brought the army to a halt and wanted to deliver a sermon on Tawheed, at which point some of his officers, some of his commanders objected to him. They say, this really isn't the time to be talking about God. We've got a war to fight against Muawiyah, who's mobilizing troops in Syria. And Amir al-Mu'mineen's response, and I'm paraphrasing here, was, well, if he doesn't understand Tawheed, how can he understand what we're fighting for? And so I think if Amir al-Mu'mineen was willing to stop an entire military campaign to explain God to one person, then it's well worth us taking a weekend collectively to ponder on the meaning of God in our lives as a community. Salawat. And now I would like to invite our very gracious host, the president of ISIJ Toronto, Al-Hajj Rizwan Khalfan, to bless us with some opening remarks. Please recite a salawat.
I begin in the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. Respected scholars, my dear elders, brothers and sisters in faith, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all our blessings and the opportunity to be able to host the ICAIR conference. It's a historic conference because I believe this is the first in North America. For us, it's a real privilege to be able to, host this, welcome you all to the great city of Toronto. And by the response we've had, where we've actually had to increase the capacity a few more times since registration, there is clearly a need. What I'm going to do for a few minutes is share my thoughts, and hopefully it gives you a perspective as you go over the next 2 days in terms of listening to the presentations, the panels, and hopefully it kind of helps you on your own journey. So, we live in surreal times, facing duality at every corner of our lives. What do I mean by duality? We talk about inclusion on a daily basis, yet the disparity in income wealth has grown to record levels. We live on the information highway. Through your connected devices, we have access to so much data. Yet finding the truth today is more difficult than ever. We reflect on past atrocities. Yet today we are complicit in creating new oppressions that future generations will have to reconcile and say, what was that generation doing? We live in uncertain times. You name it, geopolitical, economic uncertainty, natural disasters, extreme weather systems, and the list goes on, impacting, anxiety and mental health, across generations. It's not only social media that's impacting it. It's all the uncertainty around us. So you all must be thinking, why am I starting on such a sad note? I think it's a little bit of a reality. However, with challenges come opportunities. And, in my 2 years in the role that I serve in this community, the broader community, I know we keep referring to it JCC, but we have 4 centers, alhamdulillah. I've been inspired. I've been inspired how, our community comes together when it comes to supporting those who are not as fortunate as we are, those who are suffering from conflict, those who are oppressed and need a voice. You talk about eradicating poverty, providing health care, providing basic necessities. Locally and globally, this community consistently steps up to seek the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's been inspirational for me and a learning. And, when I reflect back, last year we celebrated as a community 50 years in this country, in Canada. And, I can only speak to the 35 years because I've only been here 35 years. I know many of you have been here for the full 50 years. But when I reflect back, we are grateful to those visionaries, those leaders, who set up the foundation, the facilities, the centers, the programming. But they had to persevere. There were huge challenges they had to overcome. And, the way they did it is that you had different opinions. You had discussions, debates, but we did it in spite of our differences. Why? Because we come together when we want to move the community forward. A good example, there's so many examples, but a good example is our school, our faith-based school, As-Sadiq Islamic School. Think about, they're celebrating 30 years this year. 30 years ago, there was a handful of students and a handful of parents who sent their children to a broken down building on these lands. And they took the chance. And we persevered. We all invested for the school now to be thriving, providing academic excellence in an Islamic environment with over 800 students and a long list when it comes to a waiting list. And so when we come together through open conversation, through collaboration, learning from each other with empathy, we are able to unite. United, we are able to come together and elevate not only ourselves, but everyone around us, both locally and globally, with incredible impact. And so, I'd leave you with the thoughts that, this weekend, all of us are here to learn. We're on a learning journey. And since I was talking about education, it'd be great to see how, we can actually figure out to evolve in terms of our learning journey. Learning journey that actually contributes towards the growth and development. I think it's time to kind of move forward. There's a place for monologue, but we need more dialogue. We need more interactive sessions. We need workshops. We want to be able to debate with each other. We want to develop curriculums so each of us, regardless of where we are on our journey, are able to take steps towards getting closer to our Creator. I'd like to leave you with a challenge. All of us collectively. We have global representation here. How can we all work together to create an education platform that can set up curriculums for each of us so we can go on this journey to develop and grow? This cannot be done by one community. It has to be done, the platform has to be developed across communities on a global basis. And so hopefully as you're thinking through and listening to the different discussions, one concept should be, how do we collaborate together to create an education platform that serves the broader community? Because it's not that we are in need of content. We're in need of a platform that can bring the content together and help us achieve our goals, be it spiritual, emotional, or intellectual. Once again, it's been a pleasure hosting the ICAIR team, working with, can I call you Sheikh Alexander? Khalili, an amazing and pleasant man to interact with. It's a pleasure to host all of you here. I look forward to the discussions. May Allah continue to guide us both in our intention and our actions. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much for that fascinating welcome address, Haj Rizwan. I think let's all show our appreciation for that really insightful and on-topic contribution with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I had the pleasure of talking with Haj Rizwan at length last night over dinner and hearing about all the wonderful work you're doing here in Toronto. And I have to say, it's really a blessing to be in such a forward-thinking and active community. And you have a beautiful center here, but there's a saying in Arabic, and that is sharaf al-makan bil-makin, which means that a place is made dignified or noble by what is in that place. And I would say that this beautiful building, as wonderful as it is, has only the fraction of the beauty that I have seen in just a few short days here in this community. Salawat. And I think the key to that is just that you have, there is so much life here, there is so much going on. While we had the speakers here, we were hosted very graciously by you all for dinner last night. While we were having our meal, I couldn't help but notice that you had a sports hall, people were there playing basketball, badminton, other things, and I just think it's fantastic that you have such a hub for your community in Toronto, and this is just one of many centers here, and so it's really been an eye-opener for me, for my team, and I think for a lot of our guests, even those from North America who are visiting Toronto for the first time. And so it's a credit, that's a credit to yourselves and, of course, to your leadership team. So thank you. And I think Rizwan Bhai, we need to find a way to get you on a panel so we can hear more about your ideas on climate change, artificial intelligence, and education. Thank you so much. Now I would like to invite Sayyid Mohammed Rizvi to deliver his talk. Obviously, the Sayyid could not be with us this weekend because he had a family engagement, but he was kind enough to take the time out of his busy schedule to record a video address. And just before we play the video, I just want to say that the first time I met Sayyid Mohammed Rizvi, I was but a teenager, and I was going through that phase of trying to beg, borrow, and steal copies of the old translation of Al-Mizan. And he came to my local Islamic center in London. That's London, UK, not London, Ontario, in case you were wondering. He came then, he was delivering some lectures, I believe it was in Shahr Ramadan. And I remember asking people afterwards, oh, where is the Sayyid based in London? And they said he'd come all the way from Canada. And I remember thinking, would it be possible to move to Canada to benefit more from this man? And that was I'm not going to tell you how long ago that was, because that'll reveal my age, but that was a couple of decades ago. And I have to say, meeting Sayyid Rizvi now, after all these years, again in Toronto, in his home center, his energy, his insight has not dimmed, it's only grown brighter. And I can see the effects of having such a brilliant resident alim on the community here. So truly, I mean, I have to say, I think all of us around the world are very envious that Toronto has managed to keep Sayyid Muhammad Rizvi here for so long. And we still may try and steal him away from you. So now, please can I ask, as we play the video, to recite for the health and continued barakah of Sayyid Muhammad Rizvi, aloud, salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وآله الطاهرين قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم ادع إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة وجادلهم بالتي هي أحسن. Dear sisters and brothers in Iman, respected scholars and ulama, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I would like to begin by thanking the International Center for Advanced Islamic Research, ICAIR, for inviting me to the conference. As a resident alim of Jaffrey Community Center, ISIJ, I would have wished to be here in person, but because of the scheduling issues, I am addressing you by the video message. Also, being the principal director of the Shia Research Institute, would like to just talk about it for a minute before I go on to my theme in this conference. Shia Research Institute is an independent organization established here in Toronto with the aim to bring the Shia voice to the world of academia. We work towards this goal through reputable peer-reviewed publications, academic conferences, podcasts with academic scholars, and participating in conferences like this with other institutions such as Harvard University, Oxford University of Toronto, as well as the Ataba al-Abbasiyya, the shrine of Hazrat Abbas in Karbala, and many other institutions. And inshallah, with the continued support of the community, we will be able to achieve our goals in empowering the Muslim community, the Shi'i community in North America through the Western academia. Coming to the theme that I have for this respected gathering of the scholars and ulama, I actually decided to talk about the theme which is entitled as the New Militant Atheism and the Ex-Muslim Movement. I would like to briefly, present this challenge that we faced in the West. But before that, let me just, talk about this concept of atheism. In Islamic writings, the terms used in Arabic is ilhad, zandaqa, and dahri. Ilhad basically means deviation from the right path. Zindiq is a Arabicized term of Persian origin and is commonly used for the person who does not hold any religion. And Dahri also is very similar to that. Now, when it comes to the concept of atheism, denying the existence of God, this is not a recent development in human history. It predates the advent of Islam. Individual atheists existed even before Islam and even during the early days of Islam. Al-Sharif Al-Murtada, the prominent scholar of the early era of the Ghaibat, in his Amali actually mentions some of the well-known atheists of the days of our Imams, especially 5th and 6th Imam's time. He gives their names and even their ideas and details of them. And so, existence of those who were atheist individuals is not a new phenomenon. In the West, atheism gained prominence in the 18th century during the age of enlightenment, which emphasized religion and individualism over religion. With the advancement of science, a materialistic understanding of the origins of the universe became widely accepted. And this was the time when the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche pronounced, "God is dead." And these are all new developments in history in a way. And besides that, we also have some philosophers and scientists actually who chose to identify themselves as agnostics, in the sense that they neither believe in God nor do they claim to prove his non-existence. Means they didn't have any proof to say that he doesn't exist. For example, in a 1948 debate between Reverend Frederick Copleston, a Christian priest, with the famous British philosopher Bertrand Russell, the Reverend asked him, "Perhaps you would tell me if your position is that of agnosticism or atheism. I mean, would you say that non-existence of God can be proved?" Russell very clearly replied, "No, I shall not say that. My position is agnostic." So even a philosopher like Russell, shied away from saying that I can prove that God does not exist. And so, when we look at this phenomenon, there is no doubt that atheists have existed for a long time in different parts of the world. And they were just individuals who did not believe in God. Atheism never emerged as a religion or a sect or a lobby group. It was an idea in minds of some individuals. It is only after communism came to power in Russia and China that atheism emerged as a militant ideology to combat religion and forcefully eliminate it from society, since it considered religion to be opium for the masses. However, with the collapse of the Soviet Union, Marxist-Leninist ideology went to the dustbin of history, and the suppressed religious communities in those regions re-emerged with full force. And so let's talk about this new phenomenon, the new atheism of the early 2000s. This is not just an idea or a philosophy. It has emerged as an aggressive and militant movement. And 4 individuals have actually popularized this new atheist movement. They are also known as the 4 horsemen of the new atheism. It's a name given by themselves to themselves. So you have, and it's interesting to see that their publications and their activities as such is all in a reaction. It happened after 9/11. And so obviously it is a reaction to the 9/11 attacks. So you have Sam Harris, a neuroscientist who published as his book, The End of Faith, Religion, Terror, and the Future of Reason in 2004. He criticizes all world religions, especially Islam, which he portrayed as a religion of terror and violence. Then you have Richard Dawkins, an evolutionary biologist at Oxford University, and he published his book, The God Delusion, in 2006. This became very popular document and literature of the new atheism. It sold more than 3 million copies, and it has been translated in 35 languages, and its Arabic translation has been downloaded 3 million times in Saudi Arabia alone. Then you have the third of this group, Daniel Dennett, a philosopher of science. He wrote his book, Breaking the Spell, Religion as a Natural Phenomenon. This is published in 2006. And then finally we come to Christopher Hitchens, who wrote God is Not Great, How Religion Poisons Everything. This was published in 2007. Look at the title, God is Not Great. This is actually, reacting to the words Allahu Akbar. So Islam is there in their mind when they are, writing these publications against religion in general. Now, this term militant atheism is not something that I or someone else has given to them. Dawkins himself had described this movement as a militant atheism in 2008 in one of the TED Talks. And he appealed to atheists to come out of the closet. There's individuals there who believe in atheism. He wants them to come out of the closet and basically form the community, adapt the form of atheism often called as antitheism. He had earlier said that it is fashionable to wax apocalyptic about the threat to humanity posed by the AIDS virus, mad cow disease, and many others. But he says, but I think a case can be made that faith is one of the world's great evils, comparable to the smallpox virus, but harder to eradicate. New atheists see very little good, if any, in religion, and are on a mission to purge religious beliefs from the world. According to Dawkins, the very sound of the phrase Christian child or Muslim child should grind like fingernails on a blackboard. He also calls to abandon the promotion of religion as grounds for charitable status. He doesn't want the governments to give charitable status to religious organizations. And so, when we look at this new phenomenon, the question is, what is new about this crop of atheism? Atheism existed before. Well, the new dimension of this atheism is that it proclaims this hatred towards God and against organized religion loudly and proudly from rooftops, and their motto basically is science, religion, and secular liberal values. When we look at new atheism and Christianity, since this movement emerged in the US and the UK, Christianity has been its prime target. In a post-9/11 environment, Harris and Dawkins have used strong language against Islam, even though they do not know much about this faith. Dawkins himself confesses in his book where he says, for most of my purposes, all three Abrahamic religions can be treated as indistinguishable. Unless otherwise stated, I shall have Christianity mostly in mind, but only because it is the version with which I happen to be most familiar. And so there, for example, when it comes to discussing about the arguments for God's existence, he, in chapter 3 of his book, brings up the famous argument, cosmological argument, by the 13th century Christian theologian Thomas Aquinas. This is the argument of the first cause, that everything that exists, whatever we see has a cause, and when this chain of cause and effect cannot go, this infinite regress of cause and effect must stop somewhere. Otherwise, the whole process of existence would not be there. And then he says, and so the first cause is what we call God. Now, Dawkins summarily rejects the cosmological argument, and he says, this is arbitrarily you are bringing God there as a terminator of the regress chain. And this is, an arbitrary decision that you have made. It would be very interesting to compare the cosmological argument presented by Thomas Aquinas, the Christian version of this argument, compared to the Muslim version presented by Ibn Sina 3 centuries earlier. Ibn Sina is the one who is known in the West as Avicenna. And it will be very interesting to compare, Thomas Aquinas' version with Ibn Sina, and you will see the difference there. And, Muslim intellectuals and learned people should really, they would come to appreciate the theology of Islam, especially from the Shi'i point of view, because Ibn Sina was a Shi'i theologian and scientist. But looking at the limitation of time, I will not go into the details. Inshallah, I'll leave that for my written version of my presentation and the paper, inshallah. What I would like to say, the other point about the four horsemen of new atheism, is that all four of them, they're right from a scientific perspective. And they believe that science is the only criterion of truth. Dawkins suggests that even the existence of God is a scientific hypothesis like any other. And he doesn't agree with this idea that where people say science concerns itself with how questions, and only theology is equipped to answer why questions. He doesn't want to, accept this division, although he confesses in his book where he says, perhaps there are some genuinely profound and meaningful questions that are forever beyond the reach of science. What I would like to do in the interest of time, I will only say that Islam never had a problem with science. Rather, the Quran considers the universe and its system and the human being himself as signs, ayat of Allah's power and glory, and it urges people to reflect on them. The advancement of science among Muslims during the dark ages of Europe is a historical testimony to that. And the impact of their influence can be seen even in the scientific terms which are of Arabic origin. In the words of Dr. Nasser, he says, the significance of the vast Islamic scientific tradition for Muslims is a testimony to the way Islam was able to cultivate various sciences extensively without being alienated from the Islamic worldview, and without creating a science whose application would destroy the world of nature and the harmony that must exist between man and the natural environment. I think it must be, worthwhile to look at the beautiful way Shaheed Murtada Mutahiri talks about the relationship between science and religion, where basically he says science gives us enlightenment, faith gives us hope. Science makes instruments, faith constructs purposes. Science gives speed, faith is benevolence. Science explains events, and faith inspires actions. Science is the outer revolution, and faith is the inner revolution. So let me now come to the second part, actually, which is the main part of my talk here, and that is the ex-Muslim movement, which I believe to be the byproduct of new atheism. See, although the focus of these militant atheists has been the Christian faith and Christian community, they have occasionally lumped Islam with it. It is interesting to see that Professor William Emilson of the Charles Sturt University of Australia, who was even more blunt, where he writes that it is clear that the new atheist strategy of attacking all religions or expressions of religion as a cover for criticizing not only militant Islam but Islam itself has contributed to anti-Islamic and anti-Muslim sentiments throughout the Western world. Their appeal, the appeal of these instigators of the new atheism, their appeal to atheists to come out of the closet resonated with some Muslims in the West who abandoned Islam and have openly adopted atheism. Apostasy, known in Islam as irtidad, which is the act of renouncing Islam, is nothing new in Muslim history. I have a very extensive article on this written in 1997, and mostly the act of irtidad was a personal issue and never took a communal form. And it is not a serious issue until it becomes a blatant declaration of treason against the faith and the community. However, like the new atheism, the Muslims of our time who abandoned Islam have become a militant group and formed their own community under the title of ex-Muslims. This is the new dimension of irtidad, which did exist before as a community and a group. Two individuals, Muhammad Sayyid and Sarah Haider of the Pakistani origin, living in the US, they were separately influenced by the new militant atheist movement. Muhammad Sayyid was born in US, grew up in Pakistan, moved back to US in his 20s just before 9/11. And when he saw his Muslim friends becoming more conservative and extremist, it forced him to study Quran and Hadith, and he, unfortunately, erroneously linked the extremism of his friend to Islam itself. And that is where he becomes an apostate, murtad, and declared himself an ex-Muslim. Then he met Sarah Haider, who had left the faith when she was in her mid-teens. This is when they decided to find other ex-Muslims, and through word of mouth and online forum, they established an informal network of ex-Muslims, and in the year 2013, they formed the organization which is known as Ex-Muslims of North America. By 2016, according to their statement, they had around 1,000 members in 25 cities on this continent. They organize tours known as normalizing dissent to bring ex-Muslim perspectives to college campuses throughout the US and Canada. This is very important to keep in mind, that they target, college campuses, and this is where, we have to equip our young people going to colleges. Because now you have groups like this coming there to present themselves. And they also, establish links with like-minded people across the pond. Imtiaz Shams, an ex-Muslim from London, he is the co-founder of Faith to Faithless, a British group helping ex-religious people. Now, by looking at their activities on social media, I see the same pattern of militance in these ex-Muslims as seen among the new militant atheists. Muhammad Sayyid, for example, while criticizing Islam, suggests that, these are his words, when people talk about how feminist Muhammad was, they should be ridiculed and they should be laughed at. So there is no issue of, to engage in dialogue with Muslims or to discuss or wisely, argue with them on this point. No, rather to ridicule them and to laugh at them. And this is where you see the aggressive militant approach of this ex-Muslim groups against the Muslims. The ex-Muslims of North America have, highlighted 5 main issues in their website. They talk about the right to blasphemy as a fundamental human right. They are against censorship. They talk about religious cultures which perpetuate inequality especially among men and women, should not be respected. They believe that religion is a very private, issue. It has no role or say to any government policies. And finally, they believe science and reason are the only truth. And that, religious piety has not really produced anything useful for the human society. Basically, when I look at this phenomenon and looking at what happens to such people, I can identify 5 reasons why they would abandon Islam. Basically, the first would be superstitions that they observe in their families and their communities, which have no Islamic origin. For example, honor killing, which is there in South Asia as well as in the Middle East, but this has no relation to Islam. Or the culture of denying women their share of the inheritance. Islam was very progressive in the sense that when women didn't have any share in the inheritance, Islam gave them the right of inheritance. But we still see in many Muslim cultures, people do not really respect even those Islamic values. And they look at that and say, well, it means I have to abandon Islam. The problem is they cannot look at the superstitious activities of Muslims or Muslims who are going against Islamic values and then condemn Islam or abandon Islam for that. The second thing that we see is the immoral behavior of those who speak in the name of the faith. And this is a common phenomenon across the religions and cultures, that whenever the people who stand and speak for their faith, if they themselves are not practicing what they preach, that has an impact, and people actually abandon the faith because of their immoral behavior, which is again, you condemn those individuals, but do not condemn the faith. The third issue is this influence of intense individualism. This is a term mentioned by one of the Canadian philosophers about the impact of secularism, where personal likes and dislikes collide with Islamic values. those who are influenced by this, for example, they would say same-sex marriage should be okay. They even try to read and interpret the whole story of the people of Lut, and so that's one cause. Then we also have the situation where we have some of the theological queries of the people, where they do not find satisfactory answer for that. The problem of evil in the world, the question of what will happen to the good deeds of the non-Muslims. And alhamdulillah, it's not that we don't have enough material on this issue. Much has been written, especially if you look at the book of Adl Ilahi, the Divine Justice of Murtada Mutahhiri. And finally, the influence of the far-right religious groups who present themselves, they present Quranic verses to some Muslims out of context. For example, the ayat about jihad, and this is where they generalize it, and people who don't study Islam properly, they get swayed and they abandon Islam. And so these are the issues that we need to work on it, to present the true Islamic perspective in the language that the people of our time can understand. However, this is where I would like to end my point and emphasis, that in doing this, we, especially the scholars and the ulama, should be aware of the pitfalls. We should neither blindly tie ourselves to the past to the extent that ijtihad becomes stagnant, nor be trapped by the saliqe zaman problem, which means, going with whatever is current trend at the moment. For example, some of the responses of the Muslims that I've seen to the books of the new militant atheism, I've seen that, for example, when it comes to the concept of jihad in the Quran, they try to explain that, whenever Quran talks about jihad, it is jihad bin nafs, spiritual struggle. And they try to shy away from the concept of jihad mentioned in the verses where it is in the context of the battles during the life of the Prophet, or the concept of taking up arms in defense and to fight injustice and tyranny in society. These are very rational and logical issues which can be explained in the right way. And so, Shaykh Murtada Mutahhiri has a very good advice for such reformists or modernists, where he says, one must advance with the progress of time, but also struggle against the decomposition and deviance of time. One should not look to see, one should look to see from which origins new phenomenon and changes rise forth, and in what direction they flow. Does the change arise from man's higher human drives or from his lower animal urges? Man can step aboard the vehicle of time and change, but he should not neglect the steering and control of that vehicle even for a moment. Those who talk much about the changes of time and neglect to steer and control it have forgotten the role of man himself in transformation of his lifestyle, and are like the rider of a horse who has put himself under the control of the horse. I would like to end with the words of Imam al-Muttaqeen, Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali bin Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam, where he says, Zimmati bima aqulu rahina wa ana bihi dha'im. Very powerful statement. He starts by saying, my responsibility for what I say is guaranteed with truth, and I'm answerable for it. What is he saying? He says, ألا وإن الخطايا خيل شمس حمل عليها أهلها وخلعت لجمها فتقحمت بهم في النار. Verily sins Sins are like unruly horses on whom their riders have been placed, with their reins let loose, so that they just jump with them into hellfire. ألا وإن التقوى مطايا ذلل حمل عليها أهلها وعوتوا أذمتها فأوردهم الجنة. Verily, taqwa is like the trained horses on whom the riders have been placed with the reins in their hands so that they would take the riders to paradise. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase the tawfiqat of all those who are sincerely and genuinely presenting the Islam of the Ahlul Bayt in the western part of the world. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wow, I'd just like to thank Sayyid Muhammad Rizvi for taking the time to record that really insightful and powerful lecture on the challenge of new atheism that we're facing in the West today. After having said all those nice things about Sayyid Muhammad Rizvi, it was nice to see them confirmed on screen, just underscoring once again why you were so blessed to have the Sayyid in Toronto. And I think you would all agree that we should send another salawat ala Muhammad for the Sayyid. Salawat. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to continue granting him success in guiding to the way of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Now we are going to have a short break. There are some refreshments, I believe, I can see the refreshments at the back of the men's side. I believe there are some refreshments at the back of the ladies' side. Ushers will guide you to them. We will take a 10-minute break just for you to stretch your legs and caffeinate yourselves. And then we will return for our first panel on technologies of faith. Salawat.